Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in every life when silence screams louder than words, when your reflection asks you questions you've been avoiding for years. A moment when you sit with your fears, face to face, heart to heart. And in that moment you have a choice to let your weak feeling define you, or to kill it. We all carry something heavy. Some of us carry broken dreams, some broken homes, and others broken selves. But hear me when I say this, you are not what broke you. You are what survived it. You are not what broke you, you are what survived it. Life has a way of throwing storms at us when we least expect it. One moment everything feels whole, and the next everything can fall apart. It may be a loss, a heartbreak, a betrayal, or a dream that shatters right in front of your eyes. In those moments when your world crumbles, it becomes so easy to believe that you too are broken beyond repair. But that belief, that quiet lie that says you are only the damage done to you, is not the truth. You see, what breaks around you is not a reflection of what lives within you. Pain may visit you, but it is not your identity. Suffering may sit beside you, but it is not your name. Often, people carry their trauma like a badge, forgetting that the wound is not who they are. It is a chapter, not the whole story. When we experience hardship, we tend to absorb it like a sponge. We internalize the grief, the rejection, the shame. And before we know it, we begin to think, maybe I deserved this, maybe I am not strong enough, maybe I am the problem. But survival tells a different tale. Survival is quiet but powerful. It doesn't scream, it doesn't announce itself. It simply gets up even when getting up feels impossible. You may have cried yourself to sleep more nights than anyone knows. You may have woken up with the weight of the world pressing against your chest. You may have walked into rooms full of people while feeling completely invisible. But you kept walking. That is survival. People often mistake survival as weakness, as if merely existing after a tragedy is not good enough. But those who have truly suffered know that survival is an act of rebellion. When everything in you wants to give up, and you still choose to breathe, to speak, to try again, that is power. There are pieces of you that pain tried to take, but couldn't. The smile that returned after months of silence, the dream you picked back up after being told no 100 times, the boundaries you set after years of being walked over. These are the markings of someone who did not surrender to the damage. And yet, the world keeps trying to define you by the moment you fell, not the strength it took to rise. But look at yourself. Look at the scars you wear not with shame, but with quiet dignity. They are not signs of defeat. They are proof that you were tested and you didn't vanish. You are not broken. You are rebuilt. You are not ruined. You are reshaped. And every single part of you that still chooses kindness, still hopes, still believes, despite everything, those are not weak parts. Those are the strongest. Sometimes we carry the labels others gave us in our worst moments, damaged, too emotional, not enough. But those labels were never yours to carry. They were reflections of their inability to understand your depth. The real you, the you that held on when it felt like everything was slipping, is stronger than any label could describe. You were not meant to be untouched by life. You were meant to walk through fire and still remain gold. And yes, maybe the fire changed you, but it did not ruin you. It revealed you. The truth is, nothing truly valuable comes without scars. A tree doesn't grow tall without pushing through the soil. A diamond doesn't shine without pressure. And the heart doesn't learn courage without first knowing pain. Every time you doubted your worth but chose to show up anyway, you survived. Every time your voice trembled but you spoke the truth anyway, you survived. Every time you held your own hand because no one else would, you survived. And that survival is sacred. So when the world tries to remind you of what broke you, remind yourself of what you became after it. You became wiser, softer, fiercer. You became someone who didn't give up. And no matter how invisible that strength may feel some days, it is the strongest thing about you. Weak feelings come to test you, not define you. There are moments in life when your strength feels buried beneath layers of doubt, insecurity, and fear. These are the moments when you question your worth, when your heart feels heavy and your mind becomes your own worst critic. It's in these quiet, vulnerable spaces where weak feelings creep in uninvited, yet powerful enough to make you question everything you once believed about yourself. Weakness doesn't always roar, sometimes it whispers. It tells you that you're not good enough, that you'll never make it, that everyone else is stronger, better, more deserving. It appears in small ways: hesitation before taking a step forward, silence when your voice wants to speak, avoidance when your dreams require risk. But here's what we often forget. These feelings are not permanent. They are not the truth. They are the challenge. Weak feelings are like shadows. They can only exist where there is light. They show up in the presence of potential because they want to test if you're truly ready for what lies ahead. When you're on the edge of growth, the old, familiar parts of you start to tremble. The comfort zone calls out, begging you to stay. And in that tug-of-war between who you are and who you're becoming, weakness makes its move, but weakness is not your enemy. It is your mirror. It shows you the cracks so you know where to build. It shows you the fears so you know where to strengthen. The purpose of these feelings is not to defeat you, but to wake you up. They ask, are you willing to stand tall even when you feel small? Are you willing to try again even when your last attempt broke your heart? We live in a world that teaches us to hide our weakness, to put on a brave face, to never let them see you sweat. But what if we understood weak moments differently? What if we saw them not as signs of failure, but as signs of deep emotional growth? The truth is, only those who care deeply, who dare greatly, and who dream boldly ever truly encounter fear. Weakness shows up not because you're incapable, but because you're on the verge of becoming more than you ever were. Think of the caterpillar confined in the darkness of a cocoon. In that silence, it must break itself down completely before it can grow wings. It is not weak because it is hidden. It is not broken because it is still. It is becoming, and so are you. When weak feelings show up, they are asking you, will you give up, or will you grow through this? Will you collapse under the weight, or will you let it sculpt you into someone stronger? These feelings test your resilience, not to crush you, but to prove that you are more powerful than you think, and it's okay if you don't always feel brave. Strength is not loud. Sometimes it's just the quiet decision to try again tomorrow. Sometimes it's choosing not to quit even when your hands are trembling. Sometimes it's getting out of bed on the days when your spirit is heavy and your mind is fogged with self-doubt. These tests don't care about perfection. They care about persistence. They care about whether you'll listen to the quiet voice of hope over the scream of fear. Because hope is soft, but it's relentless, and every time you choose to keep going, no matter how slowly, you pass the test. It's easy to let weakness label you, to say, I'm just not confident, or I'm too sensitive, or I always mess things up. But those aren't truths, they're moments, they're emotions moving through you, not definitions of you. Don't give them the pen to write your story. Your feelings are valid, but they are not verdicts. Just because you feel weak doesn't mean you are. Just because something feels heavy doesn't mean you can't carry it. You are allowed to feel overwhelmed, scared, unsure, and still take the next step anyway. That is courage. That is the test. And each time you face those feelings with honesty and heart, you move closer to becoming someone even your past self wouldn't recognize. Weak feelings are not a sign that you've failed. They are a sign that you are stretching, that you are growing into a version of yourself that no longer fits inside the walls that once made you feel safe. They push you, challenge you, ask you who you really are underneath the layers of doubt and fear. They want to know, will you let this moment shape you or shrink you? Will you respond with surrender or with soul? Fear is a liar, silence it with action. Fear has a way of creeping in when you are on the edge of something important. It whispers in moments of silence, making you question your ability, your worth, your path. It doesn't always arrive in loud panic or chaos. Sometimes fear wears the mask of logic. It tells you to wait, to think more, to be cautious, until your dreams become distant memories hidden behind perfectly reasonable excuses. But fear is not truth. It is a story, often crafted in the dark corners of your mind where your wounds live. It feeds on your insecurities, your past failures, your deepest doubts, and if you listen to it long enough, it can sound like reality. It tells you that you're not ready, not capable, not worthy. It convinces you that rejection is the end, that vulnerability is weakness, and that staying small is safer than risking growth. Fear knows exactly what to say to keep you still. It will remind you of every time you tried and didn't succeed. It will bring up the moments where you stumbled, the words you wish you could take back, the times you were laughed at or misunderstood. It will loop these memories like a film reel, trying to convince you that they define you, but that is the lie. Fear speaks with the voice of the past, but action speaks with the power of the present. The only way to silence fear is to move, not to wait until it disappears, but to act while it's still speaking, because courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to walk through it anyway. Every step you take in the direction of your purpose weakens fear's grip on your life. Every time you do what you were afraid of doing, you take back control. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture. Action can be small. It can be sending that email, saying yes to a new opportunity, setting a boundary, starting again after a setback. It can be choosing to speak when your voice shakes or choosing to stay when it's easier to run. These actions matter. They are declarations that fear may ride along with you, but it does not get to steer. Fear thrives in stillness. It grows in the space between thought and action. The longer you wait, the louder it gets. But the moment you move, something shifts. Suddenly, what felt impossible begins to look like a challenge you might actually be able to face. Suddenly, you realize that fear cannot stop you. It can only delay you. Many people wait for confidence before they act, not realizing that confidence is built asterisk through asterisk action. You don't feel brave and then step forward. You step forward, and then you realize you were brave all along. The process of doing something afraid is the very thing that rewrites your story. It teaches your mind that you can trust yourself even in the presence of uncertainty. Fear loves comfort zones. It wants you to stay where it's safe, where the outcome is predictable, where failure is unlikely. But nothing meaningful happens there. Growth never comes from staying the same. Dreams don't come alive in the arms of comfort. They are born in the wild space where you decide to act even when everything inside you says to stop. Sometimes fear sounds convincing because it's trying to protect you. It wants to keep you from pain, disappointment, failure, but protection is not the same as peace. Staying in the same place out of fear may protect you from the unknown, but it will also cost you discovery, evolution, and joy. You can thank fear for its concern, but you don't have to obey it. Action is the antidote. It is the answer to every what if fear throws at you. When fear says, "What if you fail?" action replies, "What if I fly?" When fear says, "What if they don't like you?" action responds, "What if I like myself enough?" You don't have to have everything figured out to take the first step. You just have to be willing to take it. Your life will not be measured by how long you stayed safe. It will be shaped by what you dared to do in the face of fear. Every time you move despite being scared, you reclaim your voice, your power, your purpose. Fear might walk beside you, but it can no longer define you. Because each action you take is a louder truth than any lie fear can ever tell. There is no shame in falling, only in refusing to rise. We all fall. Some of us fall silently in the darkness of our own minds, while others fall in public, where the world watches and judges. But the truth is, falling is inevitable. It is part of being human. Life is not a straight path, neatly paved with certainty and success. It is messy, it is unpredictable, and sometimes, despite our best efforts, we trip. We break, we lose, but falling is not failure. It is a moment, a breath, a pause in the journey, not the end of it. There is no shame in falling because it means you were moving, you were trying, you were alive enough to engage with the world around you. The only real defeat is choosing to stay down, convincing yourself that the ground is safer than the climb. So many people carry the burden of shame, not because they fell, but because they let that fall define them. They look back at the mistakes, the breakdowns, the wrong turns, and let those moments become their identity. They call themselves unworthy, incapable, not good enough, but those words are not truth. They are scars misunderstood as limits. Oh, fall is to be human, to rise again is to be free. The act of rising is not just physical, it is emotional, spiritual, and deeply personal. It is not about returning to who you were before the fall. It is about stepping into who you were meant to become because of it. When you fall, everything inside you screams to retreat, to hide, to give up. The world may even echo those thoughts, but in that quiet space where it feels like everything is broken, there is an invitation. Not to pretend everything is fine, but to gather the pieces of yourself with grace. Not to erase the pain, but to learn what it came to teach. Rising doesn't mean bouncing back immediately. It doesn't mean denying what hurt you. It means honoring your wounds while choosing to keep moving forward. It means waking up on the days when hope feels far away and deciding, even with the weight on your chest, to take one small step. Strength is not shown in how perfectly you stand. It is shown in how many times you choose to get up. Every scar tells a story of survival. Every time you rise, you remind yourself, and the world, that you are not done, that this fall is part of your story, but not the whole of it. There is power in stumbling and still continuing. There is courage in admitting that you are not okay, but that you are still here. Too often we see rising as something dramatic and grand, when in truth it is often subtle. It's in the quiet decisions, choosing to trust again after betrayal, choosing to love again after heartbreak, choosing to try again after failure. Sometimes rising means forgiving yourself, because we are often hardest on ourselves when we fall. We replay the moment over and over, wondering what we could have done differently. But the past is not a place we can live. It is only a teacher, and shame cannot exist in the presence of self-compassion. You deserve to rise not because you are flawless, but because you are growing. You are not your lowest moment. You are not the decision that went wrong, the relationship that ended, the job you didn't get, the words you regret. You are the one who stayed, who felt it all, who didn't run from the pain, and that presence with yourself is what makes rising possible. The world doesn't need people who have never fallen. It needs people who know how to rise with empathy, with humility, with resilience. Because those who rise after falling don't just rebuild themselves. They become light for others. They become living proof that darkness doesn't win. And even when rising feels impossible, even when the fall feels too deep, there is still something inside you, small but steady, that believes in another try. That voice is quiet, but it is real. It is the part of you that refuses to surrender. It doesn't demand perfection. It just asks you not to give up, not today, not yet. Don't romanticize pain healed, don't dwell. Pain is a part of life that no one escapes. It arrives in many forms: loss, rejection, betrayal, failure, loneliness. It comes quietly sometimes, creeping into your heart without warning. Other times it crashes through your life like a storm, leaving destruction in its wake. Pain is real, it is valid, and it deserves to be acknowledged, but it is not meant to be glorified. There is a dangerous comfort that can come from holding on to pain. It becomes familiar, you know how to live with it. You learn its rhythm, its voice, its shadows. It starts to feel like a part of who you are, like it belongs. And in that space, it becomes easy to confuse pain with depth, as if the more you hurt, the more human you are, as if suffering is proof of strength or meaning. But pain is not a badge of honor. Carrying it endlessly doesn't make you wiser or more worthy. It doesn't make your story more valuable. What makes you powerful is not the pain you endure, but the healing you choose, the decision to move forward, not by forgetting what happened, but by refusing to let it become your home. Too often, we wear our wounds like identities. We become the one who was left, the one who failed, the one who lost everything. But those titles are not who you are, they are chapters, temporary truths that you are allowed to rewrite. Healing begins the moment you stop introducing yourself by your pain. There is a difference between feeling pain and feeding it. It's healthy to grieve, to be angry, to cry. But when those emotions become your comfort zone, when they become the lens through which you see the world, they start to define you. You begin to seek out sadness instead of peace, because peace feels unfamiliar. You start to sabotage your own joy because pain is all you've ever trusted. Pain can distort your thinking. It tells you stories about yourself that aren't true. It says you're broken beyond repair, unlovable, not good enough. And if you hold on to it long enough, you start to believe those lies. Not because they are true, but because repetition makes anything sound convincing. That's why healing is not just a feeling. It's a practice, a choice you make every day to believe in something softer, something kinder, something new. Romanticizing pain means staying in a cycle that doesn't serve you. It means mistaking struggle for strength. But real strength is in softness, in choosing peace after chaos, in letting go even when it's easier to hold on, in forgiving, not because they deserve it, but because you do. Healing doesn't mean the pain never happened. It means you no longer let it shape every corner of your life. You are allowed to outgrow your suffering. You are allowed to wake up one day and decide that the version of you built on survival isn't the version you want to carry forward. You are allowed to want more than just endurance. You are allowed to want joy, ease, lightness, and love. Healing isn't linear. Some days you'll feel like you've moved past the pain, and other days it will knock the wind out of you again. That's okay. The goal is not perfection. It's progress. It's choosing to stand back up again and again, to speak kindly to yourself in the process, to stop picking the scab just to remember what it felt like to bleed. Letting go of pain doesn't mean it didn't matter. It doesn't erase the lessons or the impact. It simply means you're choosing not to be trapped by it anymore. You're choosing to live a life where pain is part of your story, but not the author of your future. You don't have to be defined by your darkest days. You don't have to keep proving your strength by walking barefoot over broken glass. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is rest, breathe, and say, I want to be free. And not just free from others, but free from the weight you've carried inside. Pain may have shaped you, but it doesn't own you. Healing is not a destination, it's a direction. Every time you choose peace over bitterness, self-compassion over self, criticism, growth over stagnation, you are healing. Not for anyone else, but for yourself, for the life that still waits for you beyond the pain. Strength isn't loud, sometimes it's just surviving the day. We often think of strength as something visible, bold, and undeniable. We imagine it in loud victories, in grand achievements, in unshakable confidence. We're taught to associate strength with those who stand tall no matter what, who never cry, never stumble, never falter. But real strength doesn't always look like that. Sometimes strength is quiet, invisible, messy. It's the kind of strength that doesn't need applause or recognition because it lives in the unseen corners of everyday survival. Strength is the single mother who gets up every morning before the sun rises, not because she's not tired, but because her children are counting on her. It's the teenager who shows up to school with a smile even when they're breaking inside. It's the man who sits in his car every night trying to breathe through the anxiety before going inside to a family that doesn't know how much he's hurting. It's the woman who holds herself together at work even though grief is silently pulling her apart. There is a different kind of power in simply making it through the day when everything feels heavy. When your thoughts are loud, your body is tired, and your hope is flickering. Surviving is not weakness. It's endurance. It's resilience. It's the silent fight no one sees but that you keep showing up for anyway. Sometimes strength is simply not quitting, not giving up, not letting go of yourself even when you feel like the world has. Some people are carrying battles you'll never hear about. They are not the loudest in the room. They don't post their struggle online. They don't ask for help because they've taught themselves how to cope in silence. But within them is a quiet courage that should never be underestimated. They've learned to be their own anchor. They've learned to wipe their own tears and still keep going. That is strength too. It's not always about fixing everything at once. Some days, all you can do is breathe. All you can do is put one foot in front of the other, show up, do your best with what little energy you have, and trust that somehow that's enough, and it is. You don't have to conquer mountains every day. Sometimes getting out of bed is a victory. Sometimes making yourself a meal, texting a friend, getting through a difficult conversation, or choosing not to give in to the darkness is the most courageous thing you can do. Strength is being honest with yourself. It's looking in the mirror and acknowledging the pain, the fear, the confusion, and still saying, "I'm going to try again." It's knowing that healing is not instant and peace takes time. It's realizing that you don't need to be everything for everyone. You just need to be gentle with yourself. That kind of internal strength doesn't always come with fireworks or celebration, but it's the strength that sustains us. We have to stop measuring our worth by how productive, successful, or composed we appear. You are not strong only when you're winning. You are strong when you're learning, when you're processing, when you're being patient with your own journey. You are strong when you are kind to yourself in the middle of struggle, when you choose to speak hope to yourself instead of shame, when you acknowledge your needs instead of pretending you have none. Sometimes strength is saying no. Sometimes it's walking away from what hurts. Sometimes it's asking for help even when your voice shakes. Sometimes it's letting yourself cry, knowing that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's human. And sometimes strength is not doing anything at all, just breathing, just existing, just surviving. The quiet strength within you may not get recognition, but it is sacred, it matters, and even when no one sees your fight, it is there. It is real. You are still standing. You are still here. You've carried the weight of things that would have broken others, and yet you keep showing up. That is the kind of strength that deserves to be honored. Strength doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to impress. It doesn't need to look perfect. Sometimes it's simply the decision to keep living when life feels unbearable. Sometimes it's the gentle whisper in your soul that says, "I don't know how, but I will keep going." And in those quiet, uncelebrated moments, you are stronger than you realize.